The claiming ceremony was where the broken came to be chosen, and as Senna stood among the desperate souls who had been passed over, abandoned or discarded, she did not try to be seen. A heavy cloak concealed her throat and shoulders, hiding the mark that pulsed beneath. The silver seal her father had burned into her skin to bind what she was. Moonblood. The gift that had killed her mother and would kill her too if anyone discovered it still stirred in her veins. So she kept her head bowed and her breath shallow, praying no one would sense the thing inside her that wanted to answer every wolf in the room. She would not be chosen if she stayed hidden. She would be sold into slavery if she was not chosen at all. Then the Alpha King arrived. Kale of Valdrin, beautiful and brutal, cold as the northern mountains themselves, walked past noblewomen and widows without a glance. His wolf was legendary, they said. Feral, unconquerable. But Senna saw something else. She saw the stiffness in his shoulders, the tension in his jaw, the way he moved like a man holding himself together by will alone. He stopped directly in front of her. "This one," he said. The hall erupted in whispers. Why would a king who could have anyone choose the woman hiding beneath a cloak? Senna did not understand either. Not until she felt it. Something stirring in her blood, answering something in him. And deep within the Alpha King, for the first time in 7 years, his wolf opened its eyes. The Great Hall of Valdrin had not hosted a claiming ceremony in nearly a decade. The tradition had fallen out of favor among the noble houses, considered too barbaric for modern sensibilities. But for the unclaimed, the unwanted, the wolves who had aged out of conventional matches or been discarded by circumstance, it remained the only option. The alternative was exile, or worse. Senna stood at the far end of the raised platform, as far from the torchlight as she could manage. 12 women had been arranged in a row, each one representing some form of failure in the eyes of their packs. A widow whose mate had died before giving her children. A woman with a twisted leg from a childhood accident. A mother of 3 whose husband had abandoned her for a younger bride. And Senna. The one no one would explain. Her father Aldrich stood near the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, watching her with the same cold contempt he had shown her since she was 13 years old. Beside him, her sister Coralie wore a gown of pale green silk, her golden hair arranged in perfect curls. She was everything Senna was not. Legitimate, loved, safe. Coralie caught her looking and smiled. It was not a kind smile. The auctioneer, a thin man with a reedy voice, moved down the line calling out bloodlines and qualifications. He skipped Senna entirely. Her father had paid him to. Better that she be passed over in silence than have anyone ask questions about the woman in the heavy cloak. The hall was half empty. Fewer buyers came each year. The men who attended these ceremonies were not looking for love or partnership. They sought servants, nursemaids, women to warm their beds without expectation of devotion. Senna had prepared herself for this, for being taken by some minor lord who would use her until he tired of her, for being sold into a labor house if no one bid at all. What she had not prepared for was the doors slamming open with such force that the torches flickered and nearly died. Every head turned, every conversation stopped. The presence that rolled through the entrance was not ordinary dominance. This was ancient power, the kind that preceded language that existed before wolves learned to walk as men. It pressed against Senna's chest like a physical weight, and beneath her cloak, the binding seal on her neck began to warm. No, not now, not here. She clenched her jaw and willed her breathing to slow, willed the stirring in her blood to quiet. But it was difficult. So difficult. Because something in that power was calling to her, and the thing her father had tried to kill was answering. "The Alpha King," someone whispered. "Gods above, what is he doing here?" Senna did not dare look up. She kept her eyes fixed on the stone floor, counting the cracks, willing herself to be invisible. She heard footsteps approaching. Slow, deliberate, each one echoing through the silent hall like a death knell. He was tall. She could tell by the shadow that fell across her as he moved past the other women without pausing. His scent reached her next, pine and frost and something metallic beneath, like blood or iron. A predator's scent. But threaded through it was something else. Something wrong. A hollowness where there should have been warmth. The footsteps stopped directly in front of her. Senna's heart slammed against her ribs. She could feel him looking at her, could feel the weight of his attention pressing down like a blade against her throat. "Look at me," he said. His voice was cold, not cruel, but empty, as if all the warmth had been carved out of him long ago. Senna raised her head slowly, keeping her eyes downcast until the last possible moment. Then she looked. Kale of Valdrin was beautiful in the way a glacier was beautiful. Sharp and pale and utterly without mercy. His hair was dark, almost black, falling past his shoulders in waves that looked like they had never known a gentle touch. His jaw was hard, his cheekbones severe, his mouth a thin line that seemed incapable of softening. But his eyes were what held her. They were gray, pale gray, like a winter sky before snow. And in their depths, she saw something that made her breath catch. Pain. Carefully hidden, ruthlessly controlled, but unmistakable. He was suffering. And he did not want anyone to know. Neither of them moved. The hall held its breath. Then something shifted in his expression, so subtle she almost missed it. A flicker of recognition. Not of her face. She was certain he had never seen her before, but of something else, something beneath. "This one," he said. Silence, then chaos. "Your Majesty, surely you cannot be serious," the auctioneer stammered. "She has not even been presented properly. Her bloodline is, well, there are questions about her bloodline, and her family has not provided full documentation, and—" "I said this one." Kale did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The authority in those 3 words silenced every objection before it could form. Senna stared at him, unable to comprehend what was happening. He had walked past widows of noble houses. He had ignored women with impeccable lineages and proven fertility. He had chosen her, the one hiding beneath a cloak, the one whose own father wanted her gone. Why? Kale turned away, already walking toward the doors. "Have her brought to the castle within the hour. The ceremony will take place at week's end." And then he was gone, leaving Senna standing frozen on the platform while the hall erupted around her. Her father's face had gone white with rage. Coralie looked like she might faint from shock. The other women on the platform stared at her with a mixture of envy and suspicion. But Senna felt none of it. Because beneath her cloak, the seal on her neck was burning. And somewhere deep inside her, in the place her father had tried to silence forever, something was singing. Something that had recognized its match. The castle of Valdrin rose from the mountainside like a fang of black stone, its towers clawing at a sky the color of bruised silver. Senna watched it grow larger through the carriage window, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. "This is madness," she thought for the 100th time. Why would he choose me? The carriage had been sent within minutes of the king's departure. No time for goodbyes, not that anyone would have offered them. Her father had not even looked at her as she was led away. Coralie had watched with narrowed eyes, already calculating what this strange turn of events might mean for her own prospects. Only the memory of her mother's voice kept Senna from falling apart entirely. "Stay hidden, little star. Stay small and quiet and never let them see what you carry. Promise me." She had kept that promise for 11 years. 11 years of silence and stillness, of swallowing the music that wanted to pour from her throat, of ignoring the pull she felt toward every wolf she encountered. The seal her father had burned into her neck helped. It muted the gift, dampened it to a whisper instead of a roar. But it had never silenced it completely. And today, in that hall, Standing before the Alpha King, it had nearly broken free. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door and offered his hand. Senna took it with cold fingers and stepped onto smooth black stone. Servants were waiting. They bowed as she passed, their faces carefully neutral. No curiosity, no cruelty. Just polished professionalism that somehow made Senna feel more uneasy than open hostility would have. They led her through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, past tapestries depicting ancient hunts and walls lined with portraits of stern-faced kings. Every one of them had the same pale gray eyes, the same hard jaw, the same absence of warmth. Finally, they stopped before a heavy wooden door. "The king will see you now, my lady," the footman said. Senna's throat went dry. She had expected to be shown to a room, given time to prepare, perhaps even a chance to bathe and change from her travel-stained cloak. But apparently, the Alpha King did not believe in waiting. She stepped inside. The room was a study, larger than any space she had ever occupied. Bookshelves lined every wall, reaching from floor to ceiling. A massive desk dominated the center, covered in maps and documents. A fire burned in the hearth despite the summer heat, but it did nothing to warm the air, because the cold was coming from him. Cale stood by the window, his back to her, silhouetted against the gray afternoon light. He was still wearing his formal clothes from the claiming ceremony. His shoulders were rigid, his hands clasped behind his back, and even from across the room, Senna could feel the unnatural chill radiating from his body. Shifters ran hot. Everyone knew that. Alphas especially burned like furnaces, their wolves generating heat that could be felt from paces away. So why did this Alpha King feel like winter given form? "You may approach," he said without turning. Senna moved forward on unsteady legs. She stopped a respectful distance from him and dropped into a curtsy, keeping her cloak carefully arranged to cover the seal on her neck. "Your Majesty." "Rise." She straightened. He still had not turned to look at her. The silence stretched. Senna could hear her own heartbeat, too fast, too loud. She could hear the crackle of the fire that was not warming anything. She could hear, impossibly, a faint sound that might have been something pacing, back and forth. Inside the walls themselves. No, not inside the walls. Inside him. "You are afraid," Cale said finally. It was not a question. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Of me?" Senna considered lying, decided against it. "Of what happens when you discover what I am." He turned then, slowly, his pale eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to run. "And what are you?" he asked. "Something dangerous, Your Majesty. Something your kingdom hunts and kills." She expected shock, outrage, demands to know more. Instead, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, something closer to grim recognition. "Then we have something in common," he said quietly. Before she could process that, he moved to his desk and picked up a document. "The terms of our arrangement are as follows," he said, his voice shifting back to that flat, emotionless tone. "You will become my queen. You will be given every comfort, every protection, every luxury the crown can provide. You will bear me an heir, preferably more than one, to secure the succession." He paused, looking at her directly. "In exchange, I will never ask what you are hiding. I will never demand to see what lies beneath your cloak. And I will never love you." The last sentence landed like a stone dropped into still water. "Your Majesty," Senna began, "I must tell you." "No." He cut her off with a raised hand. "Keep your secrets. I have no interest in them. You will keep mine as well. We will exist in separate spheres, crossing paths only when necessity demands. Is this acceptable?" Senna stared at him. This beautiful, cold, impossible man who was offering her exactly what she needed: protection, privacy, a place where no one would look too closely at what she was. And all he asked in return was that she never expected him to care. She thought of her father's hatred, of Coralie's cruelty, of the labor house that awaited her if she refused. "Yes," she said, "it is acceptable." Something flickered across his face, surprise perhaps, or confusion, as if he had expected her to argue. "Very well," he said. "The ceremony will take place in 5 days. Until then, you will remain in the East Wing. Servants have been assigned to attend you. They have been instructed not to ask questions." He paused. "About anything?" Senna nodded, not trusting her voice. Kale returned his attention to the document on his desk, clearly dismissing her. But before Senna could turn to leave, she heard it again. That pacing, that restless movement, coming from somewhere inside him. "Your Majesty," she said before she could stop herself. "Is something wrong?" He went very still. "Nothing that concerns you," he said quietly. "You may go." Senna left. But all the way back to her chambers, she could not shake the feeling that she had just glimpsed something she was not meant to see, and that something had glimpsed her back. Senna barely slept that first night. The chambers they had given her were larger than her father's entire house, with a canopy bed draped in silver silk and windows that overlooked the mountain peaks. But every time she closed her eyes, she felt that presence again, that pacing. That restless thing inside the Alpha King that seemed to be searching for something. Searching for her. By morning, servants had arrived with gowns, jewels, and all manner of luxuries she had never dreamed of possessing. They dressed her in soft fabrics that whispered against her skin, always careful to keep her neck and shoulders covered as she requested. They asked no questions, showed no curiosity. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like being wrapped in beautiful chains. The summons came at midday. Contract negotiations in the council chamber. Her father would be present. Senna's stomach turned to ice. The council chamber was vast, dominated by a long table of dark wood and windows that let in cold, northern light. Kale sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 advisors. He looked exactly as he had the day before. Pale, controlled, empty. But when Senna entered, she saw his hands tighten on the arms of his chair. Just for an instant. Just enough for her to notice. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to a chair near him. She sat. And then her father walked in. Aldrich had dressed for the occasion, his finest coat buttoned over his broad chest, his silver hair combed back from his face. He looked like a respectable man, a concerned father. No one would ever guess the cruelty that lived behind his carefully constructed facade. Coralie followed a step behind, her green eyes sweeping the room with barely concealed ambition. "Your Majesty," Aldrich said, bowing low. "I cannot express what an honor this is. To have my daughter chosen by the crown itself." "I did not summon you for flattery," Kale interrupted. "Sit." Aldrich's smile faltered. He sat. One of the advisors cleared his throat. "The marriage contract has been prepared according to His Majesty's specifications. The primary terms are as follows." He picked up a document. "The Lady Senna will receive the title of Queen Consort. She will be granted access to the royal treasury, properties in 4 provinces, and a personal guard of 20 soldiers. In exchange, she will provide the crown with legitimate heirs and fulfill ceremonial duties as required." Kale's voice cut through the recitation. "There is one additional term." Everyone looked at him. "I will never look upon my wife with the intent to uncover her secrets," he said flatly. "Neither will anyone in my court. Her privacy is absolute and inviolable. Any attempt to investigate her past, her family, or her person will be treated as treason against the crown." Senna's breath caught. Her father's face went white, then red with barely contained fury. "Your Majesty," Aldrich said through gritted teeth, "I must protest. You do not understand what you are agreeing to. My daughter is—" "Your daughter is my concern now." Kale's voice dropped to something colder than ice. "Not yours. You will sign as witness and then you will leave my castle. Your presence is no longer required." Aldrich looked like he might explode. His hands shook. His jaw worked as if he wanted to speak, but could not find words. It was Coralie who stepped forward, her voice honeyed with false sweetness. "Your Majesty, forgive my father. He speaks from concern, nothing more. But surely you understand that a king should know everything about his queen. For the safety of the kingdom, of course." She smiled. "There are rumors about my sister. Dangerous rumors. Would it not be wise to investigate before?" I said no. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. The authority in them pressed down on the room like a physical weight, and Coralie stumbled back a step, her face draining of color. "Sign the contract," Cale said to Aldrich. "Now." Aldrich signed. His hand shook with rage as he did it. Then they were gone, swept out by guards who appeared as if summoned by thought alone. Senna sat frozen in her chair, unable to process what had just happened. He had protected her, without knowing what she was hiding, without asking why. "You look surprised," Cale observed. Senna turned to find him watching her. His expression was still unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something that might have been curiosity. "I am, Your Majesty," she admitted. "I did not expect kindness?" He almost smiled. Almost. "Do not mistake this for kindness. I simply have no patience for men like your father. Cruelty disguised as concern is still cruelty." Something warm bloomed in Senna's chest. Something dangerous. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Whatever your reasons, thank you." Kyle looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once and returned his attention to the documents on the table. "The ceremony will proceed as planned," he said. "You may go." Senna rose and walked toward the door, but before she reached it, a thought struck her. "Your Majesty," she said, turning back. "You said yesterday that we have something in common, that we are both hiding something dangerous." He did not look up. "I did." "Will you ever tell me what you meant?" Silence. The fire crackled. The pacing she had sensed before, that restless presence inside him, seemed to intensify. She could almost see it, a shadow beneath his skin, moving, searching. "Perhaps," he said finally, "when you trust me enough to show me what lies beneath your cloak." It was not a demand. It was not even a request. It was something else entirely. A promise. Or a warning. Senna nodded and left. She was halfway to her chambers when Coralie intercepted her in a shadowed corridor. "Do not think this changes anything," her sister hissed. "The king may protect you now, but he does not know what you are, what you did." Senna kept her voice steady. "I did nothing. Mother's death was not my fault." "Liar." Her sister's voice broke. "The day your powers awakened, you lost control. Mother tried to calm you, tried to stop what was happening, and she got caught in the chaos. Your voice drove the wolves in our household to frenzy. One of them killed her trying to reach you." Coralie's eyes burned with old grief twisted into hatred. "Father had to bind you after that, to protect everyone else from your curse." The lie was so familiar it no longer hurt. That was not what had happened. That was not what had happened at all. Senna had been unconscious when her powers manifested. She had woken to find her mother dead and her father standing over her with a branding iron. But Coralie had believed their father's version for so long that the truth no longer mattered. "The king seems kind now," Coralie continued, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "But when he discovers what you are, he will burn you himself, and I will be there to watch." Then she was gone. Senna stood alone in the darkened corridor, her hands shaking, and the seal on her neck pulsing with warmth. That night, unable to sleep, she walked the castle gardens alone. The moon was full, casting silver light across beds of pale roses and dark hedges. The air was cold, far colder than it should have been in summer, as if the king's presence had infected the very stones. Without thinking, Senna began to hum. It was an old melody, a lullaby her mother had sung to her when she was small, before everything went wrong. The notes were simple, repetitive, soothing. She had hummed it 1,000 times in secret, alone, where no one could hear. But she was not alone. The air around her shifted, thickened, and then she felt it. Presence, power. Something vast and ancient and hungry, coiling through the garden like smoke. Senna froze. The humming died in her throat. Nothing happened. Then the shadows at the edge of the path rippled, and Kale stepped out of darkness itself. His face was pale, paler than before. His eyes were wide with something that looked almost like fear. "What?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Did you just do?" Senna could not speak, could not move, because she could see it now. The thing she had sensed pacing inside him, his wolf. It was not hidden anymore. It was there, visible somehow beneath the surface of his skin, pressing against the boundary between man and beast. And it was looking at her, directly at her, moving with her stillness, swaying with her silence, dancing to a song she had already stopped singing. "I do not know," she whispered. But that was a lie. She knew exactly what she had done. She had woken something that was never supposed to wake. And now, it would never let her go. The days before the wedding passed in a blur of fittings and preparations. Senna moved through them like a woman in a dream, unable to shake the memory of that night in the garden. The way Kale's wolf had pressed against the boundary of his skin, the way it had swayed to a song she had already stopped singing, the way he had looked at her. Not with anger, with fear. He had not spoken to her since, had not summoned her, had not appeared at meals or ceremonies. The servants whispered that he had locked himself in his chambers, refusing all visitors, that the castle's temperature had dropped 10 degrees overnight. That something was very, very wrong with the king, but the wedding could not be delayed. Treaties had been signed. Dignitaries had traveled from distant kingdoms. The people of Valdrin had gathered in the capital, desperate for a glimpse of their new queen. So on the morning of the 5th day, Senna allowed the servants to dress her in a gown of midnight blue silk. She allowed them to braid her dark hair with strands of silver thread. She allowed them to drape a veil across her shoulders that concealed the seal on her neck, while still leaving her face visible. And then she walked alone toward the cathedral. The crowd that lined the streets was enormous. Thousands of faces all straining to see her. Whispers followed in her wake like wind through autumn leaves. "Is that her? The one he chose at the claiming ceremony?" Why her? There were noblewomen, princesses, widows of great houses. They say she never removes that veil. They say something terrible lies beneath. Senna kept her eyes forward and her breathing steady. She had survived worse than whispers. She would survive this too. The cathedral doors loomed before her, ancient oak bound with iron. They swung open at her approach, revealing a vast space filled with candles and nobility, and cold mountain light streaming through stained glass windows. And at the altar, waiting for her, stood Kale. He looked like he had not slept in days. His pale skin had taken on an almost translucent quality. Dark shadows bruised the hollows beneath his eyes, but he stood straight and still, his jaw set with the same iron control he always showed. Only his hands betrayed him. They were clenched at his sides, the knuckles white with tension. Senna walked toward him. With each step she felt it growing stronger. That presence, that restless thing inside him that had woken to her voice. It was pacing again, pressing against boundaries, searching for her. She reached the altar and stopped. They looked at each other. The priest began speaking, words about duty and lineage and the sacred bond between alpha and mate. Senna barely heard any of it, because Kale was struggling. Tiny tremors ran through his frame, visible only if you knew where to look. His breath came in shallow gasps that he was trying desperately to control. And his eyes, those pale gray eyes that had seemed so empty before, were now filled with something that looked almost like desperation. "Your Majesty," she whispered. "Are you well?" "No," he said quietly, "but that changes nothing." The vows were exchanged. Rings were placed on fingers, his hand so cold that Senna nearly gasped when they touched hers. The priest pronounced them bound by law and blood and sacred oath. "You may claim your bride, you," the priest announced. The crowd held its breath. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The physical claiming. The bite that would seal the bond between wolf and mate. Kale stepped closer. His hand came up to cup her face, his palm like ice against her flushed cheek. She could feel his wolf now, pressing so hard against the boundary that she half expected to see fur ripple across his skin. "I cannot bite you," he said, his voice so low only she could hear. "If I do, my wolf will—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I cannot." "Then what do we do?" Senna whispered. In answer, he took her hand, raised it to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that was so gentle, so careful, so desperately controlled that it made her heart ache. "I claim you as mine," he said loudly enough for the crowd to hear. "My wife, my queen, my mate." The words echoed through the cathedral. The crowd erupted in confused murmuring. This was not how it was done. This was not proper. Where was the bite? Where was the mark? But Senna barely noticed, because in that moment, when his cold lips touched her skin, she felt his wolf surge forward, felt it press against her through the barrier of his flesh, felt it whimper, actually whimper, with longing. And then she understood. His wolf was not feral. It was not dangerous or uncontrollable. It was trapped, separated from him by something she did not yet understand, and it was slowly, surely, killing him. "Thank you," she whispered. His eyes met hers, and in their depths, she saw the truth he had been hiding. He was dying, and he had chosen her anyway. The wedding night began in silence. Senna sat on the edge of the bed in the queen's chambers, her hands folded in her lap, her heart racing. The servants had dressed her in a nightgown of thin white silk that left her arms bare, but kept her neck and shoulders covered as she had requested. They had brushed her hair until it shone and scattered rose petals across the sheets. Then they had left her alone to wait. She expected awkwardness, distance. Perhaps he would not come at all, given what she had glimpsed at the ceremony. But precisely 1 hour after sunset, a knock came at her door. "Enter," she managed. Kyle stepped inside and closed the door behind him. He had changed from his formal wedding clothes into a simple white shirt and dark trousers. His hair was loose around his shoulders. In the soft candlelight, he looked almost human, almost warm. But she could still feel the cold radiating from him, could still sense his wolf pacing, pacing, always pacing. "I must explain something, Meek," he said without preamble, "before we proceed." Senna nodded. He moved to the window rather than approaching the bed. His back was to her, his shoulders rigid with tension. "7 years ago I was cursed," he said quietly, "by a witch I trusted. A woman I believed loved me." His voice carried no emotion, but Senna could see his hands clenching at his sides. "She did not love me. She loved power. And when she realized she could not control me, she decided to destroy me instead." Senna waited, hardly daring to breathe. "The curse severed the bond between me and my wolf," Kale continued. "We exist in the same body, but we cannot touch, cannot communicate, cannot share warmth or strength or any of the things that make an alpha whole." He paused. "My wolf has been dormant for 7 years, trapped in a prison I cannot reach. And every day that passes, the separation kills us both a little more." "The cold," Senna whispered. "That is why you are always so cold." "Yes. Without my wolf's heat, my body slowly freezes. The healers say I have perhaps 2 years left, Perhaps less. The words landed like stones in still water. 2 years. This beautiful, powerful, broken man had 2 years to live. That is why you came to the claiming ceremony, Senna realized. You need an heir before I die. Yes. He turned to face her. I chose you because I thought you would be safe. A woman hiding secrets of her own. A woman who would not expect love, who would not try to save me. His jaw tightened. I thought my wolf would stay dormant, that I could fulfill my duty without risking anything. But I woke him, Senna said quietly. Yes. The word came out rough, strained. When you hummed in the garden, whatever you are, whatever gift you carry, it reached him. For the first time in 7 years, I felt my wolf move. Senna's heart was pounding. Is that not a good thing? No, his voice cracked. Because the curse was designed to punish hope. If my wolf ever fully reconnects with me, if we ever truly become whole again, my heart will stop. The cruelty of it stole her breath. A curse that punished healing. That made the very thing he needed into the thing that would kill him. So you must keep him dormant, she said. Keep him separate or die. He crossed to her slowly. You must never sing again. Never hum. Never make any sound that might reach him. He responds to you in ways I cannot explain. If you stir him again, if you bring him closer to the surface, I will kill you. Yes. They stood facing each other in the candlelight. Two people bound by law and circumstance, both carrying secrets that could destroy them. I will be silent, Senna promised. I swear it. Something flickered across his face. Relief, perhaps. Or gratitude. Then we have an understanding, he said. He reached for her then, and despite everything, Senna found herself leaning into his touch. His hands were cold as they cupped her face, cold as they traced the line of her jaw, cold as they slid down to rest on her shoulders. But his kiss was not cold. His mouth found hers with a hunger that surprised them both. She felt his restraint crumbling, felt the desperate need beneath his careful control. Her hands found his chest, his shoulders, the nape of his neck where his hair fell in dark waves. And deep inside him, his wolf stirred, not waking, not moving, just stirring, as if it could sense her touch even through the barrier of the curse. They came together in darkness and silence, no words, no songs, just breath and heartbeat, and the desperate hunger of two people who had never expected to feel anything at all. Afterward, Cale held her. His arm was wrapped around her waist, his body curved against hers despite the cold. And in that moment, with his breath warm against her hair and his wolf settled into something that felt almost like peace, Senna realized the terrible truth. She was falling in love with him, with his gentleness, with his control, with the way he had protected her from her father without knowing what she was, with the way he was fighting to live even though the odds were impossible. She was falling in love with a dying man, and the very gift that defined her was the thing that could kill him. How could she tell him now? How could she ever reveal what she truly was when the truth might be the death of him? So she stayed silent. And when morning came, she pretended she felt nothing at all. 3 months passed. 3 months of shared meals and quiet conversations. 3 months of Cale appearing at her door each evening, staying later and later, sometimes not leaving until dawn. 3 months of learning the shape of him in darkness, the sound of his breathing when he finally relaxed, the way his wolf settled whenever she was near. She never hummed, never sang, kept her silence like a prayer. But it was becoming harder, because the closer she grew to Cale, the more her gift wanted to answer. It strained against the seal on her neck, pressed against her teeth, ached in her throat like a scream that could not escape. And his wolf was growing restless. She could feel it even without singing. Every time they touched, it pressed closer to the surface. Every time they made love, it paced with increasing agitation. The separation was weakening somehow. Her very presence was eroding the barrier, even without her voice. Kyle noticed. She could see it in the way he watched her, the way his jaw tightened when his wolf stirred. But he said nothing, kept coming to her chambers, kept holding her through the night as if she were the only warm thing in his frozen world. One evening, as autumn settled over Valdrin in a blanket of gold and crimson, Senna sat by the fire waiting for him. Her hands rested on her stomach. Her heart beat too fast. The door opened. Kale entered and immediately froze. "Something is different," he said. Senna looked up at him. In 3 months, she had learned to read the subtle shifts in his expression, the slight softening around his eyes when he saw her, the way his shoulders dropped just a fraction when he crossed her threshold. "I have news," she said quietly. He crossed to her, knelt before her chair so that their eyes were level. "Tell me." Senna took his hand and placed it on her stomach. She said nothing. Let him feel what she was feeling, the faint flutter of new life taking root. His eyes went wide. "You are certain?" His voice was barely a whisper. "The healer confirmed it this morning. I am carrying your child." Kale did not move, did not breathe. Then something cracked behind his eyes, some wall he had built to protect himself from hope, and Senna saw tears gathering at the corners of his lashes. "A child," he breathed. "Our child." He pulled her into his arms with desperate gentleness, burying his face in her hair. She could feel him shaking, could feel his wolf surging with joy, pressing so hard against the barrier that she heard Kale gasp in pain. "You have given me everything," he said against her throat. "Everything I never dared hope for." Senna held him tightly, her own tears falling freely. But beneath the joy, fear coiled like a serpent. He had what he needed now, an heir, a legacy. He could pull away, could return to their original arrangement of cold distance and separate lives. "You will leave now," she heard herself say. "We have fulfilled the contract. You have no reason to keep coming to me." Kale pulled back, stared at her as if she had struck him. "What? You said you would never love me." The words came out broken. "You said once I gave you children, we would have nothing more to do with each other. So I am releasing you. You do not have to pretend anymore." "Pretend?" He looked stricken. "Senna, I have not been pretending." "Then what have these 3 months been?" she demanded. "Duty? Obligation? You are dying, Kyle. You have 2 years left at most. Why would you waste them on someone you can never love?" She was crying now, could not stop. 3 months of suppressed fear and desperate hope pouring out of her in a flood she could not control. "I have tried not to love you," she confessed. "I have tried so hard, because I know what I am. I know my voice could kill you, but I cannot help it. I love you, Kyle. I love you, and I am terrified because loving you means losing you, and I cannot bear it. I cannot—" He kissed her, hard and desperate and with none of his usual control. His hands gripped her face, her shoulders, her waist, pulling her against him as if he could merge them into one being through sheer force of will. "You foolish woman," he said against her mouth. "You impossible, beautiful, foolish woman. Did you truly think I was pretending? You said you could never love me. I said that because I was afraid." His forehead pressed against hers. "I was afraid that if I loved you, if I let myself feel anything, my wolf would wake completely, and the curse would take me. I thought distance would protect us both. But I was wrong." His voice broke. "I have loved you since the moment you called me kind for protecting your secrets. I have loved you through every silent night, every careful touch, and every morning I woke with you in my arms and thanked the gods for one more day." Senna stared at him as the words she had never dared hope for poured from his lips. "I love you," he said. "I love—" He stopped. His eyes went wide with shock. His hand flew to his chest. Kale? Senna grabbed his shoulders. Kale, what is happening? He could not answer. His face had gone white, whiter than snow, whiter than bone. Frost was spreading across his chest, visible even through his shirt, crystallizing over his heart in patterns that looked like frozen veins. His wolf howled. She heard it. Not just felt it, but heard it. A sound of pure anguish that tore through the room like a blade, and she understood. The curse had activated. By confessing his love, by letting himself truly feel it, he had bridged the gap between himself and his wolf. They were reconnecting, healing, becoming whole, and it was killing him. No, Senna screamed. No, Kale, stay with me, stay with me. His eyes found hers. Gray eyes filled with love and regret, and the terrible knowledge that he had just sealed his own death. I am sorry, he whispered. Then he collapsed. Senna screamed for the guards, for the healers, for anyone who could help. They came running, found the Alpha King unconscious on the floor, frost spreading across his chest like a disease of ice. His breathing was shallow, his skin had turned translucent, and beneath it, visible through the crystalline surface, his heart was slowing. Get him to his chambers, Senna commanded. Send for every healer in the kingdom, now. The days that followed blurred into a nightmare of waiting and watching. Kale did not wake. The frost continued to spread, creeping from his chest to his shoulders, down his arms, across his stomach. The healers tried everything: hot compresses that melted on contact with his skin, herbal remedies that froze in his veins, magic that simply slid off him like water off stone. Nothing worked. The curse is too old, the chief healer said grimly, too deeply rooted. We cannot fight what we do not understand. Senna sat beside Kale's bed, holding his frozen hand, refusing to leave. Her other hand rested on her stomach where their child grew, a life that might never know its father. There must be something, she whispered. Someone who knows how to break this. The healer hesitated. There are rumors of a witch in the eastern provinces, a woman who was once court sorceress to the old king. She was exiled after the curse was cast. Some say she knows its secrets. Bring her, Senna said. Whatever it costs, bring her here. The witch arrived 3 days later. She was ancient, her skin like crumpled parchment, her eyes sharp as broken glass. She examined Kale without touching him, her gaze seeing things Senna could not. Ice magic, she said finally. A curse of separation, designed to punish connection. She turned those sharp eyes on Senna. He fell in love with you. Yes. And you with him. Senna's throat tightened. Yes. Then you understand the cruelty of it. The curse allows the wolf and the man to exist in the same body, but never to touch. Never to share warmth. The moment they reconnect, the moment they become whole, the heart freezes. The witch shook her head. Brilliant and vicious. Morgana's finest work. Morgana? The witch who cursed him. She was my apprentice once. I taught her everything she knew. Guilt flickered across the old woman's face, including how to break what she made. Senna surged forward. Then tell me how to save him. Against ice, fire is the natural counter, but not ordinary fire. The curse was designed to resist elemental magic. The witch studied Senna with unsettling intensity. It would take something rarer, something that could reach the wolf directly, something that speaks to the beast itself. Senna's blood went cold. You know what you are, child, the witch said quietly. I can see the seal on your neck. I can feel the power bound beneath it. Moonblood, Senna whispered. Yes, the rarest of gifts. The ability to speak directly to the wolf, to influence the beast through voice and song. The witch's eyes narrowed. Your song could reach his wolf where nothing else can. Could warm the connection between them. Could break the ice from within. But my magic is bound. Then unbind it. Senna's hands went to her neck, to the seal that had been burned into her skin when she was 13 years old. The seal her father had placed to silence her forever. I would need the binding stone, she said. My father has it. He would never give it to me. Then take it. The witch rose to leave. Your mate has perhaps 3 days before the frost reaches his heart completely. After that, nothing will save him. She paused at the door. Ask yourself what you are willing to sacrifice, and then sacrifice it. The witch left. Senna sat alone with her dying husband, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. To save him, she would have to reveal what she was, would have to become the thing Valdrin hunted and killed, would have to face her father and reclaim the power he had stolen from her. But there was something else, something she had not told anyone. If she sang to his wolf, if she used her gift to warm the connection between man and beast, Kel would finally see her, not just her face, her soul. Moonbloods could not hide from the wolves they touched. Every secret, every shame, every truth would be laid bare. He would know everything, and he might hate her for it. I have to try, she whispered, pressing her lips to his frozen forehead. Even if you hate me, even if you never forgive me, I have to try. She rode through the night, 2 of Kale's personal guards flanking her. The Crane estate appeared at dawn, its familiar towers filling her with a dread she had hoped to never feel again. Her father was waiting, as if he had known she would come. The king is dying, Aldrich said, not bothering with greetings. The whole kingdom knows, and you have come crawling back to me. How predictable. I need the binding stone, Senna said flatly. Give it to me. Aldrich laughed. It was an ugly sound. Why would I do that? So you can expose what you are? Destroy our family name completely? Our family name? Senna stepped forward. You destroyed our family the day you killed Mother. Silence crashed over the room. Coralie, who had been standing in the shadows, went very still. I do not know what lies you have been told, Aldrich began. They are not lies. Senna's voice was steady despite the rage building in her chest. I spoke with the witch Vespera, Morgana's teacher. She told me everything. Aldrich's face went pale. Moonblood is passed through bloodlines, Senna continued. Mother did not carry the gift. You did. Your mother, my grandmother, was moonblooded before your father discovered what she was and had her executed for it. The power skipped a generation and manifested in me. Coralie gasped. Father, is this true? Aldrich said nothing. His silence was answer enough. You knew Mother was innocent, Senna said. You knew I inherited the gift from your side of the family, but you could not bear the shame of it. So you killed her. Blamed me. Bound my powers and told everyone I was dangerous so no one would ever look too closely at you. You do not understand, Aldrich snarled. I did what was necessary to protect this family. You murdered your wife to protect your pride. Senna's voice rose. And you would have sold me into slavery to protect it further. You are not a father. You are a monster. Aldrich lunged for her. But before he could take 2 steps, Coralie moved. She stepped between them, her face white with shock and fury. And when Aldrich tried to push past her, she struck him across the face with enough force to send him stumbling. Where is the binding stone? Coralie demanded. Aldrich stared at her, hand pressed to his bleeding lip. You would betray me for her? After everything I gave you? You gave me lies. Coralie's voice shook. You gave me a dead mother and a sister I was taught to hate for crimes she never committed. Where is the stone? The fight drained out of him, leaving behind nothing but a bitter, broken old man. The study, he said. Behind the portrait of your grandmother. Coralie found it. A small crystal sphere that pulsed with trapped power. Senna's power. Stolen from her 11 years ago and locked away ever since. Take it, Coralie said, pressing it into Senna's hands. Save your husband. Save your king. She hesitated, then added, Mother would be proud of you. She tried so hard to protect you. I understand that now. She knew what father was, and she died trying to stop him. The words struck Senna like a blow. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Stay hidden, little star. Stay small and quiet. Mother had not been telling her to be afraid. Mother had been trying to keep her safe until she was strong enough to fight back. I am sorry, Coralie continued, for everything. For believing him. For hating you. Senna looked at her sister. At this woman who had tormented her for years, who had called her dangerous, who had stood by while their father destroyed her life. And she saw something she had never expected to see. Regret. Genuine, heartbroken regret. Later, Senna said. We will talk later. She mounted her horse and rode for Valdrin as if death itself were chasing her. Senna burst into Kale's chambers just as dawn broke over the mountains. He looked worse than when she had left. The frost had spread to his throat. His lips were blue. His breath came in shallow gasps that rattled in his frozen lungs. I have it, she said, holding up the binding stone. I can save you. The chief healer looked at the crystal with confusion. What is that? How can a stone— Leave us, Senna commanded. Everyone, now. They left. The door closed. And Senna was alone with her dying husband. She knelt beside the bed, the binding stone clutched in her hands. She could feel her power inside it, singing to be released. 11 years of silence, 11 years of suppression, all waiting to pour out of her the moment the seal was broken. I have to tell you something, she whispered, even though he could not hear her. Something I should have told you from the beginning. She placed the stone against the seal on her neck, felt the magic inside it recognize its home. I am moon-blooded, she said. My voice can speak directly to wolves, can influence them, can call them or calm them or drive them to frenzy. She laughed bitterly. My father called it a curse, a danger. He bound my powers and let me believe I was a monster. The stone began to glow. But it is not a curse. It is a gift. And I am going to use it to save you, even if it means you see everything I am, even if it means you hate me for it. She pressed harder. The stone pulsed. The seal on her neck flared with heat. And then it shattered. Power flooded through her like a river breaking through a dam. It filled her veins, her lungs, and her heart. It sang in her blood, and danced along her nerves and burst from her throat in a sound she had not made in 11 years. Senna sang. It was not a song of words. It was older than that, more primal. A melody that existed before language, before wolves learned to walk as men. It was the song of the moon itself, calling to the beast inside every shifter who had ever lived. And Kale's wolf answered. She felt him rise from 7 years of enforced slumber. His presence reached for her through the barrier of the curse, desperate and hungry and so terribly alone. Senna sang to him, sang of warmth and connection and the love that had grown between her and his human half. Sang of the child growing in her belly, a life that needed both its parents. Sang of hope, of healing, of a future that did not have to end in ice and separation. The wolf howled back, not in pain, in joy. And as he howled, as he surged toward the surface, the frost began to melt. It started at his heart. The ice cracked, fractured, turned to water that evaporated instantly. Warmth spread outward, thawing his chest, his shoulders, and his arms. Color returned to his skin. His breathing deepened. But Senna did not stop singing, because she could feel the curse fighting back, could feel Morgana's magic twisting, searching for another way to kill him. So she sang harder, poured everything she had into the melody, every ounce of power, every drop of love, and every hope she had ever held for their future together. And as she sang, Kale's eyes opened. Gray eyes, no longer cold, warm now, alive, fixed on her with an expression of pure wonder. Senna, he breathed. The curse shattered. She felt it break. Felt the ancient magic that had separated man and wolf for 7 years finally, completely, irrevocably fail. Felt Kale's wolf merge with him, becoming whole for the first time since the curse was cast. And she felt something else too. A bond snapping into place between them. The mate bond that should have formed at their wedding. The connection that the curse had prevented. She felt him inside her soul. Felt herself inside his. Knew him completely. And was completely known. Kale sat up. Stared at her as tears streamed down his face. You, he said. It was always you. From the moment I walked into that claiming ceremony. My wolf knew. He had been waiting for you. Senna was crying too. I thought you would hate me when you saw what I was. What you are, is the woman who saved me. He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time since she had known him, he was warm. Truly warm. Heat radiated from his skin like summer itself. What you are is my mate, my queen, my everything. He kissed her. And the kiss was not cold, was not careful or controlled. It was fire and joy and the desperate relief of two people who had nearly lost each other. When they finally broke apart, Kale's hand found her stomach. Our child, he said softly. I can feel her now. My wolf can sense her spirit. Senna blinked through her tears. Her? A daughter, he confirmed, wonder filling his voice. Strong and fierce and stubborn. Laughter bubbled up through Senna's tears. Like her father. Kale smiled. A real smile, free of shadows and cold. Like her mother. They held each other as the sun rose fully over Valdren, light pouring through the windows and warming the room that had been cold for so long. 6 months later, Senna stood in the palace gardens, their daughter cradled in her arms. They had named her Raven, for the dark hair she had inherited from both her parents, and for the way she had arrived at dawn, crying out like a bird greeting the sun. The baby had her father's gray eyes and her mother's determined spirit, and when Senna sang to her, the child's tiny wolf stirred with contentment. Kale appeared at her side, warm and whole, and more alive than he had ever been. The curse was broken, not just for him, but for their entire bloodline. Raven would never suffer as her father had. The council has approved the new laws, he said. Moonbloods will no longer be hunted. They will be protected, trained, given places of honor in the kingdom. Senna leaned into him. And your father's old laws? Abolished. Every single one. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You changed everything, Senna. Not just for me, for all of Valdren. In the distance, Coralie walked through the gardens with the chief advisor, discussing something that made them both laugh. She had taken a position on the council after their father's arrest. Aldrich now sat in a cell, convicted of murder and conspiracy, stripped of his titles and lands. Justice, finally served. I have something for you, Kale said. He produced a small velvet box. Inside lay a pendant on a silver chain. The stone at its center was unlike anything Senna had ever seen, a crystal that seemed to contain liquid moonlight. From the witch Vespera, he explained, a gift for the woman who broke the curse. She says it will amplify your gift, help you teach others like you. Senna touched the pendant with gentle fingers. It is beautiful. Not as beautiful as you. Kale fastened it around her neck. Not as beautiful as our daughter. Not as beautiful as the life we are building together. Raven cooed and reached for her father. Kale took her with the ease of a man who had spent 6 months learning to be a parent. He looked at his daughter with such love, such joy, that Senna felt her heart might burst. I never thought I would have this, he said quietly. A family, a future, a reason to live beyond duty and obligation. Neither did I, Senna admitted. I spent my whole life hiding, believing I was a monster, believing no one could ever love what I truly was. Kale met her eyes. I love exactly what you are. Every part of you. The hidden and the revealed. The gift and the woman who carries it. He kissed her again, their daughter nestled between them, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. They had both entered this marriage seeking escape, seeking safety, seeking a way to survive in a world that had tried to destroy them. Instead, they had found each other. And in finding each other, they had found something neither had dared to hope for. Freedom, love, a future that stretched before them like an endless summer day. The Moonblood and the Alpha King. The woman who could speak to wolves, and the man whose wolf had been waiting for her voice. Together, they had broken every curse that bound them. And together, they would build a kingdom where no one would ever have to hide again. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment below. Your words mean more than you know, and I read every single one.